Hi, my name is Michelle Neal, and I would like to present my reflection on culture, ethnicity, and race. So, what is the impact of social identity? According to J.L. Hochschild, all students still impermissibly segregated. Some argue that policymakers still need to continuously acknowledge the vast interlocking structural barriers to equal opportunity, including discrimination in government policy, and segregated neighborhoods of concentrated disadvantage. So what does that mean? Even though segregation no longer exists, as such, it does still exist as a byproduct of poor policies, city and urban development, and disproportionate educational funding based on zip code. As a general rule, poor communities are comprised of racial and ethnic minorities. This is perhaps due to a feedback loop, wherein poor educational opportunities lead to increasing familial poverty. In any case, poor neighborhood schools tend to have poor funding, and we know that poor children require more programs, and therefore more money, to support learning. We also know that the most experienced teachers do better in these types of situations. However, the most experienced teachers tend to cost more, because they have more educational experience. We know that these students need after-school programs and summer programs and reading programs and language programs, more books available to them in the library, more opportunities to access technology in the school day, more counseling services, more access to food opportunities. All of these things cost money, however. And in zip codes where property taxes don't contribute to that funding, there's an issue. So, one of the biggest issues that we deal with as far as our perception and how we treat students of color, or how people around us, like our students or our colleagues, or even the culture around us, is stereotypes. So stereotypes are not only a problem for members of a racial majority, like as far as how we see others, but also for members of the group being stereotyped. Many view educational achievement as, quote-unquote, acting white. For Asian students, the stereotype of, quote-unquote, being nerds causes undue stress because they feel like they have to live up to some sort of unrealistic expectation that, you have to be good at math. Heaven forbid you also be good at sports or something else. I recently had the privilege of judging the National Qualifying Speech and Debate Tournament for the Puget Sound District of Washington. As part of this competition, a student presented a programmed oral interpretation, POI, about racism against Asians. Her program was sharply satirical and opened up my perception of Asian experiences in America. This is an excerpt from one of her pieces, To J.K. Rowling from Cho Chang, by Rachel Rosted. When you put me in your books, millions of Asian girls across America rejoiced. Finally, a potential Halloween costume that wasn't a geisha or Mulan. What's not to love about me? I'm everyone's favorite character. I totally get to fight tons of Death Eaters and have a great sense of humor, and I'm full of complex emotions. Oh wait, that's the version of Harry Potter where I'm not worthless. So what? The three largest demographics at my school are Latinos, Pacific Islanders, and Asians. Am I unconsciously marginalizing these students? I like to think I'm not, but, I have to really critically look at my teaching past. I teach The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan, which is a beautiful novel about generational migration, mothers and daughters living in China, living in America, and their experiences as migrant families. It presents a point of view that most people don't get to experience if they're not part of that point of view. So I like to think that I'm representing those students. But I think it's going to take me some more time and reflection to really come to that conclusion. And it's not just the Asian students. What am I doing to support the Latino students? How often do I represent their culture in my classroom? And, there's all sorts of perspectives that I could be addressing. And how can I best do that? So why is there a dichotomy where some students achieve and some students do not? I have two ideas about that. One, both of them I've actually already gone over, but one is poverty. Concentrated poverty, while not solely a racial issue, is a large part of why students of color lack opportunities. Poor policy only furthers the problems and causes a different type of segregation. And my second thought is stereotypes and perception, both within minority cultures and on the part of white teachers, politicians, and creators of culture. Because let's face it, teachers don't necessarily create culture. Other people create it. But we are the ones who point students in the direction of the culture they should consume. So we bear that onus. The connection between poverty and race. According to Hochschild, of course, blacks and Latinos are a disproportionate share of students with low socioeconomic status. So these results are not independent of race. When she's talking about results, she's talking about the NAEP test results. So why is that? Perhaps because persistent educational disparities create generational poverty, as mentioned previously. Recent immigrants will also face many financial struggles for various reasons. Maybe they're, fleeing from a war-torn country in the Middle East. Who knows? So what's the answer? I believe that Abington School District, as referenced in our text, provides a really good framework for how to solve a lot of these problems. And one of them is opening up the gates, so to speak, of AP classes and higher level education so that students don't feel like they have to belong to some sort of secret society to be involved in academic classes. I think we need to create the narrative that students can achieve things, and I think we need to provide them with the support so they can do that. That's tutoring, during school. After school, we need to provide them with access to technology, high-quality libraries. There's all sorts of things that we need to provide them with. You'll notice at the end of that second quote, in the big picture, a lot of this is about personalizing the instruction to meet the needs of students. I think a big thing that we need to do is personalization. As a former instructional technology coach, personalization is a big part of my life. Students who are struggling, regardless of social class or race, need support and the ability to personalize their learning. They need to be able to follow their passion with support from a teacher who's a mentor and a coach. And when they have the ability to make those choices for themselves and to direct their own learning, they feel like they have more ownership, and that benefits everyone. So, we mentioned stereotypes. According to Zuania Ramos, first, we recognize that stereotypes are present and affecting students because of the phenomenon of stereotype threat. Hispanics are lazy. Asian Americans are good at mathematics. Women do poorly in science and math. And African Americans consistently underperform on standardized tests. Stereotype threat is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Students will live up or down to perceived expectations. So remember Cho Chang. This is the end of the poem. Last summer, I met a boy who spoke like rain against windows. He had his father's blue eyes. He'd press his wrist against mine and say he was too pale, that my skin was so much more beautiful. To him, I was Pacific sunset, almond milk, a porcelain cup. When he left me, I told myself I should have seen it coming. I wasn't sure I was sad, but I cried anyway. Girls who look like me are supposed to cry over boys who look like him. I'd seen all the movies and read all the books. We were just following the plot. So what's the plot? The plot is the stereotype that this is what's supposed to happen to people of certain groups. So, our culture creates those stereotypes. Our culture creates those situations that people see and feel like they need to live up or down to. To be fair, most of those expectations don't come from teachers. They come from mass media, from peers, from outside of the school environment, maybe even from families. Sadly, however, and as much as I would like to believe otherwise, they also come from within the school, from my colleagues. Students pick up on these stereotypes and they will play the role they feel they've been assigned. Our job as teachers is to write a better screenplay. So struggles. Recalcitrant school boards, unenlightened school leadership, and non-progressive colleagues. The importance of leadership. According to Blankstein, one aspect of building internal capacity relates to developing one's ability to reframe or redefine the problem in order to solve it. This generally takes a deeper analysis on the part of the learning community and highly skilled guidance from the leader or leadership team. Teachers have to be willing to take risks, and if they don't feel like their building leadership supports them in those risks, they're not going to take them. And change requires risk, because you have to be able to do some trial and error, because you're not always going to get things right at the first try. We've all experienced the toxic teacher's lounge. Our job is, one, to stay out of it, but two, to push our colleagues to be better versions of themselves. And if they are unable to, we need to encourage teachers who maybe need to seek other, employment, to seek other employment. And our school board. School leaders at the building level, our principals, are only able to make changes as far as district leadership is willing to let them. It's the school board that determines funding, after all. So all stakeholders need to have the freedom to make the best decisions for students based on current research and local observation. We all have to be on the same boat together. Change takes time. Change requires sustained effort, and sometimes there will be some trial and error. My district and my school have both made large tracks toward narrowing achievement gaps. However, we still have a lot to do. We've helped students with food insecurity. We have tutoring programs or one-to-one. We provide opportunities to access the internet. We have a plan in place with our local internet provider to provide students on a lottery system with free internet. We're making gains, but there's still a lot that we can do. So in conclusion, there's the resources. Thank you.